Mitchell, we've been, over like the last month or so, we've had a couple conversations. I've had an ongoing conversation with Chuck Grimmett, a friend of ours, and always something we talk about from time to time. And I think something people love to talk about, consume content on, think through. It's work-life balance. And we're going to talk about it. But first, kind of want to give each of us an opportunity, just a quick overview of like, okay, how do we approach this topic ourselves personally and our kind of journey from, starting our careers and everything. So what are your thoughts on work-life balance? How do you think about it right now for you personally?
Yeah, so much different than I used to. I think that work is like one part of our lives, but like zooming out, the way I think about it today is kind of like, how do I build the life that I want? What does that look like? And that's tough because I'm not always like living that kind of ideal mix, but it's at the 10,000 foot view. What's important to me is like working on problems that I care about, having the autonomy to work on those problems the way that I want to, or the way that I think is best. Being challenged, doing stuff that I think has an impact, but it's that like so much of that is like work related. Beyond that, it's like I want to constantly be around people and exposed to ideas that make me think bigger and differently than the way that I do. And so examining that when I think about designing my life, it's part of that's like where I choose to live, who I choose to spend the most my time with, what friends do I have in my life that I regularly pick up the phone and call, and it's also makeup of like how I spend my time on a day-to-day basis. I probably read more than I ever have in my life, and it's kind of like giving myself the freedom to go down those rabbit trails versus like feeling like I have to always be focused on this one most important thing, like work related. I think that's kind of the easiest way.
Yeah. In some ways it sounds like now more than ever, you feel like your time is your own.
Yeah.
Both
the
work
freedom
and outside of work. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. How has that changed? Like, how did you approach this stuff as you started your career?
Well, I think that a lot of it was carryover from school, where it took a long time to figure out how to choose what to do with my time after like 20 plus years being told what to do all the time. And like a lot of, even in spite of like rebelling against a lot of that, I think that there's still some carryover from that. When you get out in the real world, there's both what I'm responsible for at work, whether I have freedom to choose a little bit or not. And then there's this expectation outside of work of like, what should I be spending my time on? What should I be doing? What does an adult look like? What does somebody my age look like? And that messed with me for a long time, because it tapped into everything from like the goals I had personally and professionally, and like at different ages looking out, and it's like, am I ahead of where I should be? Am I behind? And feeling pressure, like, even as much as like, I want to sit down and read some classic fiction because I love classic fiction and literary classics and all those kind of things. And sometimes being like, well, that's not going to help me get better at my job or make more money or advance in my career. So I can't do that, and feeling actual guilt from those kind of things. And so like a lot of life was more about like, it was almost being reactionary and letting inertia kind of lead the way versus like having a very deliberate, intentional approach to how I want my life to be and what I want it to look like. And I'd say the biggest difference today is like, I want to enjoy life versus I want to be the highest achiever possible, which is what kind of the era that I was in, when I was first getting started.
Yeah. I certainly experienced that in different ways and probably different levels at different points. I think anybody who is ambitious, whether you are like maybe have that schooled mindset remaining of, okay, I'm measuring myself against other people and kind of this arbitrary, am I making enough, am I making what would be considered a high salary for somebody in my position at whatever age and stuff. And I think it's so easy to fall into that trap, even if you're not naturally that stereotypical like academic high achiever as a kid. And now that's clearly going to translate into those very like tracked status seeking career paths and stuff. It was like, all right, I'm in the startup world. Like that can easily translate to that and everything. And what I would tell young people, what I would tell myself is you have to like proactively fight against that. And what I would tell myself is spend the first like 10 years of your career. Your goal is to figure out what you want your long-term scoreboard to be. Yeah. And it's a lot of work to figure out what you want it to be. So I think that makes it even easier to fall into these traps of, okay, it's easy to have a scoreboard based on salary. It's easy to have a scoreboard based off of, am I getting promoted and am I advancing at this company, or am I in the right industries or the types of jobs that my social network, my family and friends would think are, they would connect with and associate with success and everything.
Yeah. I think that I don't want to take for granted that everybody is just constantly thinking about like, how do I achieve my life's purpose? How do I, do all those kind of things? Because I think that like everybody has a little different makeup about what's important to them. But I think that it is sometimes easy to fall into the trap where you've checked a lot of boxes. So it's like, I'm supposed to have a job. I know I have to have a job to pay the bills. And like, once you have kind of those Maslow's hierarchy of needs like filled, stop working towards the other things that are more important. And I don't know, for like really ambitious people, it's different. Like for me, it's always been about like, how do I achieve more? How do I achieve more? How do I achieve more? But like at a certain, even on, as somebody who is ambitious, I kind of reached all of the external scorekeeping benchmarks at, in my mid-20s. And I looked around and I was like, wait, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And that was a rude awakening, because I thought that, suddenly once you get there, you're going to be on this mountaintop and all the secrets to life are going to be waiting, and there weren't. Like you actually have to work at it to figure out what are the things I want in my life that actually bring me fulfillment. That's tough.
Yeah, I think. And so like in your case, if let's say you kind of realize this in your mid-20s, 4 to 5 years into your professional life, what if you didn't realize it for another 4 to 5 years? It would have made it that much more difficult to get out of that situation, golden handcuffs, et cetera. And that's why I would tell people like almost actively don't put yourself in those situations. Yeah. And you want to like probably prioritize like interestingness and like being around people that are interesting to you, becoming an interesting person yourself. And from there, like if you're able to achieve that for yourself, like that type of self-knowledge, and you can look back like on your 20s, for instance, and be like, wow, I did some really cool things. Now, like if you're the type of person who can do that, you're most likely the type of person who is now capable of translating that into wealth generating activities and stuff. Yeah.
Instead, I think the common pressure is to feel like you have your entire life figured out and then go grind away. And there's no like necessarily end in sight when like really like go accumulate, like what she said, go accumulate a lot of interesting experiences. Or if you have some vague idea of what you want to do, go find experiences that are going to help you identify the or build the skills that are going to contribute to that vague idea. Yep. So I remember this now, thinking back to kind of that hump in my life where I was like, okay, there's something bigger. Like what's next? I feel like I've achieved everything, but this is not what I thought it was going to be. I remember I was journaling a lot at that point in my life. And I remember writing something down. It was like, am I living a story I'd want to read?
Yeah.
And it was kind of a challenge, like sounds like such a cliche thing to say, but it was like, my life has become pretty boring because I'm not chasing anything else anymore outside of my job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's easier to fall into the trap of trying, like, getting on that fast track to golden handcuffs and optimizing for those types of things, especially for someone who's ambitious. But the flip side is, like, don't float either. Yeah. And don't drift. Become, like, you have to keep challenging yourself in different ways and everything. So, okay. So I'll give quick background on, I think, some of the things I would think about related to this when I was younger, and can start to talk about, okay, where am I at now and everything. So from an early-ish age, late high school through college, I was particularly focused on, okay, I want to find the thing I'm passionate about. I want to have meaning out of work and stuff. And it was two reasons why I started to think that way, younger than I think most people do. One, my dad and family, like, they were successful on traditional terms, and, he was very happy with his life, and he clearly loved his work and loved working. But also, like, a lot of the people I met through his work, just seemed like it's just a job at the end of the day to them. Yeah. And now I probably look at a lot of those jobs, and I'm sure I would find them interesting for different reasons. But at the time, like, I knew I wasn't interested in finance or, like, the housing industry and like corporate jobs. But the second reason is I actually consider I'm kind of I'm hyper competitive in ways, but I'm also, like, a naturally lazy person. And my big fear at, like, 17, 18 was, if I don't find something that I like get meaning out of, I'm never going to do a good job. Yeah. Like, you tell me to dig ditches every day, I'm not going to have a great time, and I'm not going to be like,
we're different on that.
Yeah. I'm not set out to be the best ditch digger in town. You challenge me to a game of ping pong or video game or any sport, like, all right, I'm there for it. Or just, like, how many red cars can you count on the road over the next 5 minutes? Yes. But yeah, that type of stuff. I'm like, yeah, no. And that's how I approached school. It was like, nope, don't find this interesting. Not going to do these assignments, or I'm going to do just enough to stay in favor with the teacher, and they'll like me, and then they'll give me a better grade than I really deserve and stuff.
So more of an interest. It just seems like much more of an interest-led approach.
Interest-based. Yep, for sure. And because, like, my family grew up well off and everything, and they were, like, the first generation. So I was, like, the first generation of, like, children to experience that. I think I almost saw it as a challenge of, okay, I want to be successful on my own terms. Yeah. And figure out what that is. And then that's led me to different things. So, it's funny because it kind of leads me to a similar spot as you, but kind of took a different route there. Like, I experienced burnout just as you did, but for, I think, pretty similar reasons, but maybe there's some important differences of, like, okay, I wanted my work to be, like, taking over my life because I wanted to have that like one big passion.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew this was happening, and people were telling me, it's like, oh, you gotta find a social life and you gotta figure that out. I'm like, yeah, I'll get to that. I had fun in college. I'm good right now. But I think I realized, like, okay, there is a personal balance that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And it's so, at least for now, I'm sure we'll both slip up in different ways over time. The big thing that's been easier about it is because now more than ever, with like being in control of Praxis and everything, I feel that autonomy, and my decisions are my own. And also, in order to succeed professionally and on those like more traditional terms, I know that I have to be looking at this as a long-term play. And in order to be successful long-term, I can't treat it as an ongoing sprint.
Yeah.
And everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, a little background.
In some ways, that like skin in the game, that
Totally.
increased skin in the game, and like the interest-based thing, like makes it a little bit, like makes clarity seem a little bit easier, but you just don't have a choice.
Yeah. I mean, skin in the game, I think, is the most powerful thing. And I would encourage anybody, if you have the opportunity to put skin in the game on something that's important to you, then do it. That's probably the number one thing that will help you become a better version of yourself, because you're just forced into it.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely has been the same for me. So awesome. Fun to talk about work-life balance. I'm sure we'll continue to talk about this over the years. So it's been another episode. Hit subscribe. We'll be back again soon.